morning, all. Welcome you all to on Commerce Online sessions presented by ASAP. Today we are having the subject Advanced Cost Accounting, and we are dealing with the topic Standard Costing Part 2. Today we have our faculty, Dr. Anthony Joseph. He's an associate professor in the Department of Commerce at St. Bergman College, Changanasheri. So I would like to welcome Sir to take the session. Sir.
Good morning, dear friends. We are continuing with standard costing. During the last session, we have discussed about variance analysis, material cost variances. Now we are planning to speak about labor cost variances, which will be followed by overhead cost variances. So straight away, without much introduction, I would like to pass on to labor cost variance, because we have to go a long way within a short period of time. We have to complete labor cost variance as well as overhead variance within this 1.5 hours. So please be very careful, patient enough to listen to me. First of all, we are dealing with labor cost variance. We know that labor cost is the second element of cost in any manufacturing organization. So, labor cost variance is the difference between the standard labor cost and actual labor cost. We know that in an organization employing workers, the organization used to pay the remuneration. We call it as employee remuneration or employee compensation. The actual amount paid will be recorded in the books of accounts. If the organization is employing standard costing, there will be different standards with respect to employees. The standards usually applied are the labor cost per hour or employee cost per hour, number of hours required for completion of a job, and number of units to be produced within a specified period of time. So there will be standard time, that is the standard time for producing a given output. There will be standard rate, that is the labor cost per hour or per unit of output. So labor cost variance actually tries to identify the difference between the total standard labor cost and the actual labor cost. We try to identify whether there is any difference between the standard labor cost fixed by the organization for a particular time period and the actual labor cost incurred. So look at the equation for that. Labor cost variance is equal to standard labor cost minus actual labor cost. The difference between standard labor cost and actual labor cost is a labor cost variance. The students, you please understand that. Here standard labor cost means the standard labor cost for the output achieved. Standard labor cost means the standard labor cost for the given output or for the actual for the given output. Always remember, standard labor cost means standard labor cost for the actual output. So labor cost variance is otherwise equated as standard hour into standard rate. Standard hour into standard rate will get or will give standard labor cost, and actual hour into actual rate, it will give the actual wages paid. You always remember the actual hour for the computation of labor cost variance is the actual hours paid for. You know that, students. You know that you have studied labor cost. You know that suppose if an employee is given 10 hours time, or the working time of employee is 10 hours. Normally, some time, a part of the total time, a part of this 10 hours will be lost. It is considered as normal loss. For example, the noon meal or the rest time. These cannot be avoided. We call it as normal loss. Sometimes the actual loss may be more than that. Sometimes there may be abnormal loss of time. From the amount paid or from the paid labor, some part of the time may be lost. For the computation of labor cost variance, you should not take into account the normal as well as the abnormal loss of time. You should take into account the actual hours paid for. Remember, this is always very important. So now we have to see how this is computed. Let us take an example for illustration. You students viewing this, you can write down this illustration, please. We will continue with this. I shall read out the standard and actual figures of a company are as follows. A company is employing standard costing. The standard as well as actual figures of the company are given. Standard time for the job is 1000 hours. Students, note down. You take it down in your notebook. Standard time for the job is 1000 hours. Standard rate per hour is 50 per hour. Standard wages per hour is 50. Actual time taken for the completion of the job, it is 900 hours. Wages paid is 36,000. You are required to calculate the labor cost variance. What are the figures? We have standard time, it is given as 1000. Standard rate 50 per hour. Actual time taken for the completion is 900 hours. Actual wages paid is 36,000. You are required to calculate the labor cost variance. I think you have completed writing this this question. So moving on to the solution of this problem. Okay. See this table. The question is given again in another form. Time taken is 1000. Standard time. Standard time is 1000 hours and actual time is 900 hours. You see the difference? It is 100 hours. That is a difference between standard time and actual time by 100 hours. Okay. And the wage rate is, standard wage rate was 50. We have fixed standard wage rate as 50, but actual wage rate is only 40. So there also there is a difference. That is rupees 10. Rupees 10 per hour is the difference between standard wage rate and actual wage rate. So naturally look at the labor cost. Labor cost is hours into rate. Hours into rate. Remember, labor cost is labor hour into rate. So standard labor cost is 1000 hours at the rate of 50. So it is 50,000. That is 1000 into 50. That is 50,000. And actual wage rate is 900 into 40. That is 36,000. 36,000. This 36,000 was actually given in the question. So there is a difference between standard labor cost and actual labor cost, and the difference is rupees 14,000. Let's have a detailed look at this, the causes of this 14,000. How the difference arises. How you students are expected to learn precisely why this difference arises, or how this difference arises. While going through the table, you can see there are two reasons for the difference in the labor cost. One is regarding the difference between standard time and actual time. So the first reason for labor cost variance is the difference between standard labor time fixed and the actual labor time taken. Here it is 100 hours. Definitely it will create some changes in the labor cost. And another thing is that we have fixed the standard wage rate as 50 per hour, but actual wage rate is only 40 per hour. So there is a difference between these two, rupees 10 per hour. Okay, rupees 10 per hour is the difference in the rate per hour. So these are the two reasons for creating the difference between standard labor cost and actual labor cost. So the difference is 14,000. The calculation in red, the final answer in red color shows labor cost variance is 14,000, and that is denoted as F. That is, F represents what? Favorable. Favorable to the organization. Favorable to the organization. How it becomes favorable? You look at the actual labor cost. Actual labor cost is lower than standard. Standard is 50,000. That means what? We are permitted to spend up to 50,000 for completing this task. The output here is a job. The cost accounting department permitted you to spend, or the management has permitted you to spend rupees 50,000 as labor cost. But you, as the manager of the supervisor of the laborers, has spent only 36,000 for completing this job. So we have spent less than the standard. When the actual cost is lower than the standard cost, the variance will become favorable. Remember, there are two reasons for standard labor cost variance. What are they? Difference between standard time and actual time, and the difference between the standard rate and actual rate of wages. Okay, we are moving on to the next. Again, this is actually, I have already explained. Labor cost variance arises due to two reasons. Hence, the labor cost variance has two compartments or two parts. They are labor rate variance and labor efficiency variance. Labor rate variance, you know now exactly what it is. Labor rate variance, rate refers to the rate per hour or rate per a particular time period, the wage rate, and labor efficiency variance. So these are the two components of labor cost variance, labor rate variance and labor efficiency variance. Now we have to see labor rate variance. We have already learned labor rate variance arises due to the difference in the actual rate at which wages is paid and a standard fixed rate. You know that wages, labor rate variance or labor rate of pay variance arises due to the difference in the standard wage rate and actual wage rate. Always remember, due to standard wage rate and actual wage rate. So here is the equation for labor rate of pay variance or labor rate variance. It is standard cost of actual time reduced by actual cost. Standard cost of actual time reduced by actual cost. This should be very carefully noted. Standard cost of actual time. Standard cost of actual time. Very, very important. That part is very important. Understand it. It is not purely standard cost. It is standard cost of actual time. The difference between standard cost of actual time and actual cost is the labor rate variance. So labor rate variance is actual hour into standard rate minus actual rate. This equation definitely gives you a clear understanding about how to interpret this variance. Second equation, that is labor rate variance is equal to actual rate into standard rate minus actual rate. It's very important. We are taking into account the difference between standard rate and actual rate. And the difference is multiplied with actual rate. Sorry, actual hour. We are taking the difference between standard rate and the actual rate. In our example, we have standard rate per hour. 50 hours. and actual rate per hour, and we are multiplying, or we are taking the product of this difference and actual hours worked. When actual rate is less than standard rate, the variance becomes favorable. Remember, when actual rate is less than standard rate, the variance becomes favorable. The third one is an expansion of the second one. That is, actual hour is multiplied with standard hour and actual rate. This is a simple arithmetical operation. So remember, the second one is the key. You are to learn it by, you are to by heart it. Labor rate variance is actual hours into standard rate minus actual rate. The third one is an expansion, arithmetical expansion of the second one. Okay, moving on to another illustration explaining this labor rate variance. The same example, you don't want to take it down again. You have already taken it down the same example in the first case. The same example is given for explaining what is labor rate variance. Okay, so once again, look at it. Standard time is 1000 hours. Standard rate is 50 per hour. Actual time taken is 900 hours. Actual wages paid is 36,000. Here, actual rate per hour is not given, but you can calculate actual rate per hour if you want. Actual rate per hour is actual wages divided by actual time. That is 36,000 divided by 900. That is what is 40. We have computed in the last illustration. Okay, the standard time is 1000, actual time is 900, standard rate is 50, and actual rate is 40. So we have to see the rate variance. Equation here is standard rate minus actual rate into actual hour. So labor rate variance is 50 minus 40. That is, 50 is the standard rate, and actual rate is not directly given in the question. So we have calculated actual rate is the total labor cost, that is 36,000, divided by actual hours worked is 900. So 36,000 divided by 900, that is 40 per hour. 40 per hour. 900 is the actual hours worked. So it is 40 per hour. So labor rate variance is 50 minus 40. 50 is the standard labor cost per hour, and 40 is the actual labor cost per hour. So the difference is 10. Actual hours worked is 900. So 900 into 10, it is 9,000. It is denoted as favorable. Why? Think about it. Why this is denoted? This is denoted as favorable. This is denoted as favorable because the actual rate is lower than the standard rate. This is beneficial to the organization. You think it that line. That is whether this is beneficial to the organization. Standard rate fixed was 50, but we have paid only 40 per hour. That means the cost is going down. So it is favorable. Here it is favorable, 9,000. Okay, clear? I hope you got the idea. You have to understand exactly how labor rate variance is computed. Labor rate variance is actual hour into standard rate minus actual rate. This equation must be by heart. Okay, we are going to labor efficiency variance. Labor efficiency variance. It is the difference between standard labor cost of actual production. Standard labor cost of actual production and standard cost of actual time. Understand it. Labor efficiency variance is the standard labor cost for actual production and the standard cost for actual time. So naturally, labor efficiency variance is equal to standard rate into standard time minus standard rate into actual time. Standard cost of actual time is computed by applying the equation standard rate into actual time. And the standard cost for actual production is standard rate into standard time. That means standard time for actual production. Okay, always remember, here standard time means standard time for actual production. Okay, clear? I hope you have this equation with you at present. Labor efficiency variance is standard labor cost for actual production reduced by standard cost for actual time, or labor efficiency variance is standard rate into standard time minus standard rate into actual time. Okay, moving on to the illustration. The same illustration, you don't want to take it down again. Standard time 1000 hours, standard rate 550 per hour. Actual hours taken for completing the job is 900 hours and actual wages paid 36,000 rupees. So efficiency variance is computed. Labor efficiency variance is standard rate into standard time minus standard rate into actual time. All information are readily available in your mind, in your memory, because we have already seen it twice in the last two illustrations. So labor efficiency variance, for computation of labor efficiency variance, we need standard rate, it is 50. We need standard time, it is 1000 hours. Actual time is 900 hours. So labor efficiency variance, applying the equation standard rate 50 into standard time 1000. So 50 into 1000 minus standard rate, actual time is 900 and the standard time rate is 50. So 900 into 50, the labor efficiency variance is 50,000 minus 45,000. 50,000 minus 45,000, that is 5,000 favorable. Why it became favorable? Because the actual time is lower than the standard time. Actual time is lower than the standard time, because so the efficiency variance become favorable. Another thing you may be thinking, the students may be thinking, why this is called efficiency variance? Why this is efficiency variance? We can't directly see exactly anything related to efficiency. As far as labor efficiency is concerned, it is computed on the basis of the standard time and standard time given for completing a task and the actual time within which it is being completed. Remember, my dear students, you have to take into account the basics of labor cost computations you have studied in your degree classes. You have studied in detail the labor cost computation and efficiency, etc. So the efficiency is always computed on the basis of the standard time given for completing a particular task or a particular job and the actual time within which it is being completed. Here we have given the 1000 hours for completing the task or for completing a particular job. But in reality, the same job for which 1000 hours are being given is completed within 900 hours. Say, for example, if the employees were completing the job by taking exactly 1000 hours, the efficiency is 100%. Remember, efficiency becomes 100% when actual time and standard time are same. Efficiency will be more than 100% when the employees take less time than the standard time. Efficiency will go below 100% when actual time exceeds standard time. All these you have studied. You might have studied in your degree classes. Even that is not required. This is the methodology. You have a standard time. Here it is 1000 hours. You have the employees have completed the job within by taking less time than the standard time or the permitted time. So they are efficient. Their efficiency is more than 100%. The 100% will reach when actual time taken for completing the job is exactly equal to the standard time. Okay, that is why this variance is known as efficiency variance. We are checking the labor efficiency. Efficiency here is 5000. It is favorable because actual time taken for completing the job is lower than the standard time. Okay. efficiency variance is over. Hope you have a good understanding about labor efficiency variance. Always remember, labor efficiency variance may be decomposed into three different variances. Labor efficiency variance may be decomposed into three different variances: idle time variance, labor mix variance, and labor yield variance. Okay. Labor efficiency variance is divided into three components. They are labor idle time variance, labor mix variance, and labor yield variance. So we are trying to understand one by one. Idle time variance. You know exactly what is idle time. The general, you should have a clear understanding about the general meaning of the term idle time, the concept of normal idle time, as well as the concept of abnormal idle time. Say, for example, if the total working hours in a factory is 10 hours per day, and 1 hour is given as lunch break, coffee break, etc. The management cannot avoid it, cannot control it, because it is quite normal. It is as per rules and regulations of the country. Okay, we are paying wages for 10 hours, but the employees will be available for work only for 9 hours. The difference between 10 and 9, that 1 is the normal idle time for which the company is paying wages. 9 hours, that's 10 minus 1, 9. 9 hours is taken as the, or considered as the normal working time or the standard working time of an employee per day in my example. Normal working time or standard working time. Suppose you find that a particular employee has worked only for 8 hours. We have already paid for 10 hours, but a particular employee has really worked only for 8 hours. The standard working hour per day is 9 hours, but the employee worked only for 8 hours. That means we lost 1 hour. That loss is considered as abnormal idle time. Such idle time cannot be avoided. For computing idle time variance in this case, we are taking into account abnormal idle time only. We don't want to take into account the normal idle time. You are to remember the cost accounting principles dealing with the cost of normal idle time. Okay. So the fundamental equation for normal idle time is standard rate per hour into actual idle time. Okay? Are you able to hear me? Hello? Hello?
Can continue, sir.
And the sound of the Hello? And the sound of the Okay. Idle time variance is equal to standard rate per hour into actual idle time. Standard rate per hour into actual idle time. Here actual idle time means abnormal idle time, abnormal idle time. There are other equations also. Actual time worked minus actual time paid for into standard rate. This is only an expansion of the first equation, that is idle time is actual time worked for and actual time paid for. So don't worry about it. Idle time variance is standard rate per hour into actual idle time. Your actual idle time is the abnormal idle time. Moving on to an illustration dealing with idle time variance. You have to take it down. This is another illustration. So you please take it down. ASD Limited, name of a company, is a company employing standard costing technique. Information is related to P1 department of the company where it produces a standard product. You don't want to take down all these. You take down actual working hours paid for is 100 hours. Actual hours paid for 100 hours. And actual wages paid is rupees 70 per hour. Actual wages paid is 70 per hour. Normal idle time permitted is 10%. Normal idle time permitted is 10%. Actual hours worked is 60 hours. 60 hours. Standard wage rate rupees 60 per hour. You are required to compute idle time variance. Required to compute idle time variance. Okay. See. My dear students, there is a correction in this question. Actual working hours paid for is 70 hours, not 100 hours. It is 70 hours. Actual working hours paid for is 70 hours. You make a correction there in the question. Normal idle time is given as 10%. That means 10% of 70, that is 7. So the standard working time is 70 minus 7, that is 63 hours. 70 minus 7, that is 63 hours. Actual working hours is given in the question as 60 hours. Therefore, abnormal idle time is 3. Abnormal idle time, we are taking the difference between standard working time and actual working time. Standard working time is 63 hours and actual working hours is 60 hours. The abnormal idle time is 3 hours. The standard rate of wages is given in the question. It is 60 per hour. Sorry, the standard wage rate is 60 per hour. You please make a correction in actual working hours paid for. It is not 100 hours. It is 70 hours. So total working hours, actual hours paid for is 70. Normal idle time is 10% of 70, that is 7. So standard working time is 63 hours, that is 70 minus 7. Actual working hours is given as 60 hours. So abnormal idle time is 3 hours. Idle time variance is standard wage rate 60 into abnormal idle time 3, 180. Abnormal idle time is always unfavorable. Always unfavorable. Abnormal idle time is, or idle time here is always unfavorable because we are paying for the time for which no work is taking place. Okay, our cost will increase, our losses will increase. So abnormal idle time variance is always unfavorable to the organization. Okay, are you clear about it? Actual hours worked is 70. 10% of it is expected to lose, that is 7 hours. So employees are expected to work 63 hours during these 70 hours, but Actually, they have worked only 60. That is, their working hours is less by 3 hours. We count it as abnormal idle time. So abnormal idle time variance is 180. Moving on to another, that is labor mix variance. Labor mix variance. You please, students, please remember, labor mix variance is computed only when there are different types of employees. When there are different types of employees on the basis of their skill, on the basis of, or some other basis, and making payment at different rates depending upon their skill. Okay. So, for example, a group of workers, including people with different skill sets, and paid at different rates based on their skill sets, then labor mix variance is calculated. In no other case, no labor mix variance is calculated. It is, remember, is calculated only when there are different types of employees. Labor mix variance is the difference between standard cost of work in standard proportion. This is very, very important. Write down the first equation also. It is very important. Even if it is lengthy, it gives a clear understanding about what is labor mix variance. Standard cost of actual time worked in standard proportion. Standard cost of actual time worked in standard proportion minus standard cost of actual time worked in actual proportion. Standard cost of actual time worked in standard proportion minus standard cost of actual time worked in actual proportion. If you are using the second equation or the third equation, you have to remember the first one in your mind, especially the first part, standard cost of actual time worked in standard proportion reduced by standard cost of actual time worked in actual proportion. Okay. Second one is also standard cost. First and second are standard cost. The difference is the standard time. In first case, we take into account the standard time for actual output, and in second case, we are taking into account the actual time. Okay. Moving on. Labor mix variance. Another one is labor yield variance, or we call it as sub-efficiency variance. Labor yield variance or sub-efficiency variance. Labor yield variance arises due to the change in the productivity of the workers. Arises due to the change in the productivity of workers. So labor yield variance is equal to standard labor cost of actual output reduced by standard labor cost of actual time worked in standard proportion. Standard labor cost of actual output minus standard labor cost of actual time worked in standard proportion. Or yield variance is equal to standard rate into revised standard time. Here one more item, revised standard time. Standard time may be revised. Reduced by standard rate into actual time. Whenever we calculate yield variance, the standard time is revised on the basis of the actual. So we have to calculate revised standard time. Standard rate into revised standard time minus standard rate into actual time. Okay. Now we have to verify. As in the case of materials, we can verify here also labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance, labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance. This is applicable when there is no abnormal idle time. Labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance. As in the case of materials, material cost variance is equal to material price variance and material usage variance. Similarly, here also labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance. In other words, labor cost variance is equal to labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance plus idle time variance. when there is abnormal idle time, the equation is modified. That is labor rate variance plus labor efficiency variance plus labor idle time variance. And labor efficiency variance is equal to labor mix variance and a labor yield variance. Mix variance and a yield variance. Okay, we are going to see to solve an illustration taking into account all the labor costs. So should be ready to take down the question. Okay, see the question. Please take down this question. Please take down this question. The standard labor employment, actual labor engagement in a week of 40 hours. That must be highlighted. 40 hours in a week of 40 hours for a job or as under. The gang has produced 1,800 standard labor hours. The gang has produced 1,800 standard labor hours. That must also be underlined. This is also very important for solving the question. I shall explain it while solving the question. Okay, you are required to calculate cost variance, rate variance, efficiency variance, mix variance, and yield variance. Here, there is no information regarding the abnormal idle time, so we are not asked required to calculate the idle time variance. You have to calculate all other labor variances, labor cost variance, rate variance, efficiency variance, mix variance, and yield variance. Standard number, the employees are classified into 3 different categories, that is skilled workers, semi-skilled workers, and unskilled workers. On the basis of their skill, employees are classified into different groups. Standard number of workers in the gap. In the group, 32 skilled, 12 semi-skilled, 6 unskilled. But actual number of workers employed by the organization is 28 skilled workers, 18 semi-skilled workers, and 4 unskilled workers. Standard wage rate fixed was 30 in case of skilled, 20 in case of semi-skilled, and 10 in case of unskilled. And actual wage rate per hour is 40, 30, and 20 respectively. 40, 30, and 20 respectively. Have we completed the question? All of you must take it down, take the question so that we can solve it one by one. We have to calculate labor cost variance, rate variance, efficiency variance, mix variance, and yield variance. So we need all this information for calculating all these. Okay, I hope you have completed the question. So moving on to the first part, that is labor cost variance. Shall I move? Okay. Before proceeding to the solution, we have to calculate the total standard labor hours. Total standard labor hours. Standard number of skilled workers is 32, semi-skilled is 12, and unskilled is 6. So total number of employees become 32 plus 12 plus 6. So it is 50. Is it right? Total number of employees. Standard number of employees in the gang is 32 plus 12 plus 6, that is 50, and they are given a 40 hours week. So the total number of labor hours, is 50 into 40, that is 32 plus 12 plus 6 into 40. 40 is the hours per week. They are engaged an hour with 40 hours. A week with 40 hours. A week with 40 hours. So 50 employees for 40 hours equivalent to 2,000 labor hours. Right. And actual labor hours produced is given as 1,800. Actual labor hours produced is given as 1,800. It is given. You remember, the actual labor hours is 2,000. Sorry, standard labor hours is 2,000. Actual labor hours produced is 1,800. So naturally, the standard labor hour and actual labor hour differ. Standard labor hour and actual labor hour differ. That means the standard hours for actual output should be calculated. Standard hours for actual output should be calculated. Why it is? The actual labor hours produced. That means what? They have produced output equivalent to 1,800 standard hours. That is the real meaning. They have produced the output equivalent to 1,800 standard hours. We have already fixed the standard as 2,000, but they have produced output only to the extent of 1,800 hours. So there is a difference between actual hours produced and the actual hours. So standard hours for actual output should be calculated. And it is to be calculated in respect of each category of employees. The proportion between actual labor hours produced and the total labor hours is 1,800 to 2,000. 1,800 is the actual labor hours produced, 2,000 is the total standard labor hours. So there is a reduction in the standard labor hours. That is 1,800 divided by 2,000 into 1,280. What is this 1,280? You always remember. 1,280 is the total standard time for skilled workers. There are 32 skilled workers as per the standard. Remember, in your question, standard number of skilled employees is 32, and they have worked for 40 hours. They are expected to work for 40 hours. So their total time is 32 into 40, that is 1,280. In case of semi-skilled workers also, the same proportion is applicable. 1,800 divided by 2,000 into 480. What is hello?
കേൾക്കുന്നുണ്ട്.
Hello.
Hello, sir. Hello. Hello, sir.
Hello. Hello. Okay. Hello. In case of semi-skilled workers, we found that the standard number of semi-skilled employees is 12. And they were also expected to work for 40 hours. So 12 into 40 is the 480. So 1,800 divided by 2,000, that is the proportion between the actual hours produced and the standard. In case of unskilled workers also, similar calculation is required. 1,800 divided by 2,240. 240 is the unskilled number of unskilled workers is 6, and they were expected to work for 40 hours. So 60 into 40 is 240. So standard hours for actual output is computed as 1,152, 432, and 215. Remember, Remember, the standard time for actual output is computed. Standard time for actual output is computed as 1,152 for skilled workers, 432 and 215 for unskilled workers. You should be very, very clear about this calculation. This is applicable when the standard fixed and the actual output are different. Okay. So moving on to labor cost variance. Labor cost variance is standard hour into standard rate minus actual hour into actual rate. Standard hour into standard rate minus actual hour into actual rate. You should be very, students, please, you should be very, very careful regarding the standard hours. Standard hours is the standard hours for actual output. Always remember, standard hours here represents standard hours for actual output. We have already computed in respect of 3 different types of employees. So we are calculating the labor cost variance in respect of skilled employees. Standard hour is 1,152. We have calculated in our earlier slide, 1,152 hours. And standard rate is fixed as 30. You know it. It is 30. In our question, standard rate is 30 per skilled workers. Okay, clear it. Minus 1,120 into 40. From where we got this 1,120? 1,120 is the actual hours worked by the employees. Actual hours worked. That is number of employees into 40. Actual number of employees. There were 28 skilled workers. Look at the question. Actual number of workers employed is 28. Skilled workers 28. They have worked for 40 hours. So 28 into 40 is the is 1,120. How we are calculating it? Number of employees into 40. 40 what does it mean? 40 means 40 is the number of hours in a week. Here for this purpose 1,120 is number of employees skilled 28 and they have worked for 40 hours. So 28 into 40, 1,120. So naturally the difference is 10,240. It is taken as adverse variance. It is considered as an unfavorable variance or adverse variance. Why? Why? Actual hour into actual rate. Look at it. Standard hour into standard rate is 34,560 only, but actual hour into actual rate is 44,800. So actual hour into actual rate is the actual labor cost, and standard hour into standard rate is the standard labor cost. Actual labor cost is more than the standard labor cost. So the variance is adverse to the organization or unfavorable to the organization. Okay. Then regarding semi-skilled, 432 into 20, 432. We have already calculated 432. Look at the second last line here. It is 1,800 by 2,480. That is 4,432. It is the revised standard time now. Okay, 432 into 20. That is the standard time for actual output is 432 for semi-skilled workers. The rate is 20. Standard rate is 20. and the actual hour is 720. 720 is 720. We are employee 18 employees. 18 into 40. So naturally 720 actual hours paid at the rate of 30. Paid at the rate of 30. That is actual rate is 30. So there is adverse variance to the extent of 12,960. 12,960 is the adverse variance. Similarly, unskilled variance. So to calculate the total labor variance, we have to take into account, or we have to take the sum of all the three different types of employees. It is 24,240 adverse. 24,240 adverse. Okay. Labor cost variance is standard hour into standard rate minus actual hour into actual rate. The most important point to be remembered in this case is standard hour means standard hour for actual output. If there is a difference in the standard output and the actual output, standard hour for actual output must be calculated. Always remember, when there is a difference in the output, actual output and standard output, the standard hour for actual output must be calculated. Okay, moving on to the next. Okay. Labor rate variance or labor rate of pay variance. It is actual hour into standard rate minus actual rate. Actual hour into standard rate minus actual rate. As far as skilled workers are concerned, actual hour is 1,120. Actual hour we have already computed. It is actual number of employees, laborers in 40. What is this 40? 40 is the total working hours of the week. We are considering the work for a week. So total number of hours in the week is 40. So 28 skilled workers were there, 40 labor hours. So 28 into 40, 1,120. Standard rate is 30 in respect of skilled employees. Actual rate was 40. So the difference, you see, the actual rate is more than standard. So the variance is adverse, 11,200. And semi-skilled, 720. We have already calculated actual number of employees, semi-skilled employees into 40. It is 720. The standard wage rate was 20. The actual wage rate applicable to semi-skilled workers is 30. So here also, the actual wage rate is more than the standard wage rate. So the variance is adverse, 7,200. Unskilled workers, actual hours is 160. How we got it? Actual number of unskilled workers 4, number of hours in the week 40. So 40 into 4, 160. Their standard wage rate was 10, but we have paid at the rate of 20. So we have paid more than that of the standard. The variance is adverse. In all the three cases, the variances are adverse. Rate variances are adverse. You can have a look at the actual wage rate. All actual wage rates are more than the standard. So variances are adverse. Take the sum. Labor rate variance is 20,000. That means the change in the labor cost due to the change in the actual wage rate from the standard wage rate is 20,000. This adverse 20,000 adverse means we have spent 20,000 more than the standard fix. That is, what does it mean? But we have spent more than 20,000, from the standard labor cost expected. Okay, it is very simple. So the labor rate variance is also over. I think you have this with you at present. You have written down in your book. So moving on to another labor efficiency variance. Labor efficiency variance. labor efficiency variance is equal to standard rate is equal to standard rate into standard hours minus actual hour. Difference between standard hour and actual hour is multiplied with standard rate. Standard rate you are very familiar, skilled 30, unskilled 20, and semi-skilled 20 and unskilled 10. You are very familiar. 1152, 432, 216. We can have a look at it from where we got it. From where we got it. Okay, here the standard hours for actual output is standard hours is modified into 1152, 432, and 215 because there is difference between the standard output and the actual output. So it is being modified. So 1152 minus 1120. What is this 1120? It is also familiar to you. Actual number of employees or actual number of skilled workers into 40. Second, 720 is actual number of semi-skilled workers given in the question into 40. In case of unskilled workers also, actual number of unskilled workers 4 into 40, that is 160. You look at the variances. The first one, as far as skilled workers are concerned, the variance is favorable. Why? Because actual hour is less than the standard. Actual hour is less than the standard. So the variance become favorable. In case of semi-skilled workers, actual hour is more than the standard, so the variance become adverse or unfavorable to the organization. And in case of unskilled workers also, actual hour is only 160, standard hours computed is 216, so the difference is positive, or the actual hour is less than the standard, so the variance here is favorable 560. When there are some favorable items and adverse items, you take the difference. 960 plus 560 minus 2880, or 2880 minus 960 minus 560, it is 1360 adverse. It is like positive and minus negative. Okay. You must be very careful about the equation. Here also, standard hour means standard hour for actual output. We are moving on to labor mix variance. Labor mix variance. Labor mix variance is standard rate into revised standard hours minus actual hours. Revised standard hours minus actual hours. Actually, the revised standard hours is computed when there is a difference between the standard and actual hours work. Standard and actual hours work. The equation for revised standard hours is actual hours work. It is not down. This revised standard hours is equal to actual hours worked into standard hours divided by total standard hours. Actual hours worked into standard hours divided by total standard hour. For the skilled workers, actual hours worked, it is 2000. I have shown it in the first slide. regarding the solution. How many employees were there? Total number of employees, it is 50. Total number of employees, it is 50. They have worked for 40 hours. So 50 into 40 is equal to 2000. This is the actual hours worked. 1280 is the standard hours for skilled employees. Number of skilled employees into 40. Number of skilled employees, standard number of skilled employees into 40. In your question, you have standard number of skilled employees. They have worked for 40 hours. So, and divided by total standard hours. Total standard hours should be calculated by taking into account the actual total number of employees as per the standard and the number of hours they have worked. In your question, you can see okay, in this question, you can see there are 32 employees, 32 skilled workers, 12 semi-skilled workers, and 6 unskilled workers. Take the total is 50. Actual number of workers 28, 18, and 4. That is also 50. So you remember the total standard number of hours is 50 into 40, that is 2000, and the actual number of hours, that is also 50 into 40, 2000. Okay. So as far as skilled workers are concerned, their standard rate is 30, revised standard is 1280. Here there is no difference between revised standard and the actual standard because the actual hours and the total standard hours are same. Actual hours is computed from the question. Actual number of workers into 40. Actual number of hours of workers 50 into 40, 2000. The total standard number of workers is 50 into 40, that is 2000. These two are similar. So the standard time and the revised standard time are same. That is revised standard hours and standard hours are same in this case. So skilled workers, as far as skilled workers is concerned, the standard hours is 1280 and actual hours is 1120. That means actual hours is lower than the standard or revised standard. So it is favorable. The variance is favorable to the extent of 4800. As far as semi-skilled workers are concerned, similar is the computation. Standard time is 480. We have already calculated it 480, and actual hours is 720. This figure also we have seen. So here again, variance is 4800, but it is adverse. Why it is adverse? It is adverse because the actual hours is more than the standard. Actual hours paid for is more than the standard. So the variance is adverse. As far as unskilled workers are concerned, their standard time was 240. They have actually worked for 160 hours. So the actual hours worked is less than the standard time. So the variance is favorable. So ultimately, labor mix variance is 800 favorable to the organization. The computation is very, very important. The labor mix variance, the equation for that should be learned thoroughly. You always remember, in some cases, revised standard hours and actual standard hours will become same. Revised standard time and actual time will become one. Remember, here the revised standard time and the actual standard time are one and the same because the total standard time is 50 into 40, that is 2000, and actual standard time is also 2000. So there is no difference between these. When there is no difference between the total actual time and the total standard time, there is no need for computing the revised standard hours. When there is some difference, it must be computed. Okay, moving on to yield variance. Moving on to yield variance. Yield variance is standard rate into standard hour minus revised standard hour. Here also, here the standard hour means standard hour for actual output. Standard hour for actual output, which we have computed earlier. As far as skilled workers are concerned, it is 1152. Standard hour is 1280. So the variance is 3840. Then, as far as semi-skilled workers are concerned, 432 is the standard hour for actual output, and revised standard hours or standard hours is 480. So 960 adverse. Unskilled workers, 216 is the standard hours for actual output. Standard hours for actual output is only 260, and our standard is 240. So 240 adverse. So yield variance is 5040 adverse. Okay. So we are winding up the labor yield variance. It's a lengthy process. Study about this is a very, very lengthy process. Now we have to learn about the. We are moving on to overhead variance due to limited time. I will be running for the next portion. I will not get enough time for explaining all this, but students, this part is very important, and it requires a thorough understanding of the cost accounting principles. Okay, whatever be, I would like to tell you something about overhead variance. When we speak about overhead variance, you know that overheads are classified into two different categories, that is variable overhead and fixed overhead. Variable overheads will fluctuate in proportion to the actual output produced or actual time produced, but fixed overheads will remain constant. So overhead variances are basically classified into two different categories, that is variable overhead variance and fixed overhead variance. Now we are dealing with variable overhead variance for you. So the first thing, variable overhead variance, the first one is variable overhead cost variance. Our variable overhead cost variance is the difference between standard overhead for actual hours and actual variable overhead. It is simply the difference between the standard overhead for actual hours or standard overhead for actual production and actual variable overhead. Look at the last equation, that is also very important. It is variable overhead cost variance is equal to the difference between recovered overhead and actual overhead. Recovered overhead, you know that it is the absorbed overhead. Absorbed overhead, the excess of or the difference between absorbed overhead and actual overhead is the variable overhead cost variance. These two equations are important. Okay, we have variable overhead efficiency variance. Variable overhead efficiency variance is the difference between standard overhead, variable overhead for production minus standard variable overhead for actual hours. Or more clearly, variable overhead efficiency variance is equal to standard hours minus actual hours into standard rate. So naturally, you remember this difference between standard hours and actual hours creates this standard efficiency variance. Whenever we think about efficiency, the hour is more important. These two should be connected. So variable overhead efficiency variance arises due to standard hours for actual production and actual hours. There may be difference between standard hours for actual production and actual hours. It is multiplied by standard rate. So this is very, very important equation. Moving on to another one, variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable cost variance has two components. The first component is variable overhead efficiency variance, and the second component is variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead expenditure variance is the difference between standard variable overhead for actual hours and actual overhead. Standard variable overhead for actual hours and actual overhead. Or in other words, it is equal to standard rate minus actual rate into actual hours. So remember, this variance arises, overhead expenditure variance arises due to standard rate and actual rate. It is multiplied with actual hours. Okay. Then we have fixed overhead cost variance. Moving on to fixed overhead. Fixed overhead cost variance is absorbed fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. As in the case of variable overhead, here also the equation is same: absorbed fixed overhead minus actual fixed overhead. There are some other equations also. I don't have time to tell you all. This is fundamental. Then fixed overhead volume variance. This arises due to the difference in the volume of production. So fixed overhead volume variance is equal to absorbed fixed overhead minus budgeted fixed overhead. We might have a budgeted fixed overhead. The absorbed fixed overhead may be something different from that of the budgeted overhead. The difference is considered as fixed overhead volume variance. In other words, fixed overhead volume variance is equal to standard hour into standard rate minus budgeted hour into standard rate. Okay, this should also be noted down. Fixed overhead volume variance is equal to standard hour into standard rate minus budgeted hour into standard rate. It is budgeted hour into standard rate. So volume variances arises due to difference in the absorbed overhead and the budgeted overhead. And fixed overhead volume variance is divided into three categories. Volume variance is divided into three categories, that is efficiency variance, capacity variance, and calendar variance. There are three components for fixed overhead volume variance. They are efficiency variance, capacity variance, and calendar variance. So look at the fixed overhead volume variance. Fixed overhead components of fixed overhead volume variance. Fixed overhead capacity variance is equal to standard rate into actual hour minus budgeted hour, or actual hour into, this is an expansion of the first one, actual hour into standard rate, budgeted hour into standard rate. The first one is very important. Fixed overhead capacity variance is equal to standard rate into actual hour minus budgeted hour. So you take the difference between actual hour and budgeted hour, it is multiplied with standard rate. That is the capacity variance, actual hour and budgeted hour. Then we have fixed overhead calendar variance. You remember, this calendar variance is computed only when there is a difference in the number of days as per the budget and actual. when there is a difference between actual number of working days and the budgeted working days, the calendar variance is calculated. Otherwise, if there is no difference between the actual number of working days and budgeted working days, there is no need for calculating the calendar variance. So remember, calendar variance is related to the number of working days. Okay. Another one is fixed overhead efficiency variance. It is calendar variance is fixed overhead rate per day. You have to calculate the fixed overhead rate per day. That is multiplied with the difference in the number of working days. That is the actual number of working days and budgeted number of working days. The difference is taken. That is multiplied with the fixed overhead rate per day. Another one is fixed overhead efficiency variance. Standard rate into actual hour into standard hours. Standard rate into actual hours minus standard hours, or efficiency variance is an expansion, that is actual hour into standard rate minus standard hour into standard rate, or fixed overhead efficiency variance is equal to, this is also very important for solving some questions. This equation may help you. Fixed overhead efficiency variance is recovered overhead minus standard overhead. Standard hours into standard rate is standard overhead, and actual hour into standard rate is the recovered overhead. Both are same, but expressed in different ways. If you understand the concept properly, you can see that all these equations are same. So recovered overhead minus standard overhead will give you the fixed overhead efficiency variance. Okay. Sometimes revised capacity variance may be calculated. When calendar variance is computed, there will be modifications in the capacity variance. In that case, revised capacity variance will be calculated. We already learned about capacity variance. All right, we have learned about capacity variance. That capacity variance must be revised when there is calendar variance. Calendar variance arises when there is a difference between actual number of working days and budgeted number of working days. So when there is calendar variance, revised capacity variance is calculated. Actual number of hours minus revised budgeted hours. For the computation of capacity variance, we have applied the equation actual hours into budgeted minus budgeted hours. Here it is revised. It is revised budgeted hours into standard fixed overhead per hour. The equations are same. Only difference is, in case of revised capacity budget, we are applying revised budgeted hours. Okay, let's have a simple last one. Let's have a simple question to deal with overhead variances. Have a question. Look at a question. I'm not sure whether I can complete this because the time allotted is only up to 11:30. We have only 4 with this problem. We may not be able to finish it because it is a full-fledged problem. Excuse me for this. I don't have enough time to complete this. So I would like to conclude the session. We are not completing the fixed overhead variance. We have explained only the theoretical concepts of overhead variance. Overheads are classified into 2 different categories, fixed and variable, so that overhead variances are also classified into 2 different categories, that is fixed variable overhead variance and fixed overhead variance. Variable overhead variance, we have variable overhead cost variance, we have variable overhead efficiency variance, and we have variable overhead expenditure variance. Variable overhead efficiency variance and variable overhead expenditure variance will give you the variable overhead cost variance. As far as fixed overhead variance are concerned, fixed overhead cost variance is there, fixed overhead expenditure variance is there, fixed overhead volume variance is there. Volume variance is divided into three different categories: efficiency, capacity, and calendar. Remember, calendar variance arises when there is a difference in the actual number of working days and the budgeted number of working days. With the illustration, this is only one illustration I have with you. So please take down this as fast as possible. All the students are required to take down this. Without taking down the question, you will not be able to follow me. The question may look very simple and short, but it's a very lengthy question. It may be a 20-mark question for you. So please take down the question immediately. We have two columns: budget and actual figures regarding budget and actual is are given. Output budgeted output 30,000, actually is 32,500. Hours 30,000 and 33,000. Fixed overhead 45,000 and 50,000. Variable overhead 60,000 and 68,000. Working days 25 and 26. Once again, output 30,000, 32,500. Hours 30,000, 33,000. Fixed overhead 45,000, 50,000. Variable overhead 60,000 and 68,000. Number of working days budgeted 25 and actual it is 26. You are required to calculate overhead variances. Nothing is mentioned about the different types of overhead variances. You have to compute all possible overhead variances. Okay. Students, if you have took down the question, please, we are moving on. Okay. Variable overhead. First of all, we are dealing with variable overhead cost variance. The equation is recovered overhead minus actual overhead. You know it? You should take it down. Variable overhead cost variance is recovered overhead minus actual overhead. We have to compute so many things. The question is a raw material ruling. We have to compute the required data from the question. Straight away, we can't apply it. So first of all, we are calculating the standard hours per unit. Standard variable cost per unit. It is calculated by applying the equation budgeted hours divided by budgeted unit. Budgeted hours divided by budgeted units. Budgeted hours is 30,000 and budgeted units is also 30,000, readily given in the question. So it is 1 hour. That means for producing 1 unit, we need 1 hour. Budgeted hour is 30,000, budgeted production is 30,000. So 1 hour is the standard time for producing 1 unit. Okay. And in the question, we are given with actual output. Actual output is given as 32,500 units. Our standard time is 1 hour per 1 unit. 1 hour per 1 unit. So standard time required for producing 32,500 units is 32,500 into 1, that is 32,500 hours. The standard output for standard hours for actual output is 32,500 hours. This 32,500 is the actual output. For producing 1 unit, we need 1 hour. So number of hours required for producing 32,500 units is 32,500 hours. And standard overhead rate per hour. We have to calculate the standard overhead rate per hour. It is calculated by applying the equation budgeted overhead divided by budgeted hours. Budgeted overhead divided by budgeted overhead divided by budgeted hours. So standard variable overhead per hour is budgeted overhead is, it is given in the question, it is 60,000, and budgeted hours is 30,000. So standard variable overhead per hour is rupees 2. Rupees 2 per hour. You remember, we have produced 32,500 units. And for producing 1 unit, we need only 1 hour. So 32,500 hours we have worked. For 1 hour, we are expected to spend rupees 2. Remember, 32,500 here represents 32,500 hours. That is the standard hours for actual output, 32,500 hours. For 1 hour, the variable cost is 2. So variable overhead recovered is 32,500 into 2, that is 65,000. It is simple. Don't worry about it. So variable overhead cost variance is recovered overhead minus actual overhead. Recovered overhead we have rupees 65,000 we have computed. 65,000 we have computed. Actual overhead is given in the question. Look at the question. Actual overhead is given as 68,000. Actual overhead is given as 68,000. So the variance is 3,000 adverse. Actual overhead is more than the recovered overhead. That means here there is under absorption of overhead. We have recovered only 65,000, but we have spent 68,000. So the overhead is adverse to the extent of 3,000. Are you clear about it? The important thing is the calculation. Standard rate per hour, standard time for producing 1 unit, then standard variable overhead per hour. These calculations are very important. You have to apply the common sense. The equations given me are relevant. You have to learn it and think about it. Okay, we are moving on to the next. Variable overhead expenditure variance is the next one. Variable overhead expenditure variance is standard variable overhead for actual hours minus actual overhead. Standard variable overhead for actual hours minus actual overhead. Actual overhead is readily given in our question. Actual variable overhead is given, but we have to calculate standard overhead, variable overhead for actual hours. We have already calculated the standard hours per unit, that is budgeted hours divided by budgeted units in the last slide. Here also it is given 30,000 by 30,000, 1 hour. For producing 1 unit, we need 1 hour. So standard rate per hour is equal to budgeted overhead divided by budgeted hours. Standard variable overhead per hour. Budgeted overhead is 60,000. Budgeted overhead is hours is 30,000. It is 2. The same as in the case of the last slide. So variable overhead per hour, standard variable overhead per hour we have computed. It is 2. So standard overhead for actual hours. Standard overhead for actual hours. It is 33,000 into 2. 33,000 is the actual hours produced. Actual hours, it is given in the question, 33,000. 33,000 into 2, that is 66,000. So standard overhead for actual hours is the product of actual hours and the standard hour rate. Actual hours is 33,000. Standard rate is 2. So the standard hours for actual hours is 66,000. So variable overhead efficiency expenditure variance is equal to standard of variable overhead for actual hours 66,000 minus actual overhead. It is given in the question 68,000. Sorry, there is a difference of 2,000. I think it is not 3,000. It is 2,000 adverse. Okay, it is 2,000. 2,000. So moving on to Moving on to the next one. Variable overhead efficiency variance. It is standard variable overhead for production minus standard variable overhead for actual hour. We have computed standard hours per unit 1 hour. Standard hours for actual production is 32,500. That is also calculated earlier. Standard variable overhead for production is 32,500 into 2. That is 65,000. It has already been calculated. Overhead rate per hour ₹2. It is already calculated. Actual hours worked is 33,000. So standard overhead for actual hours 33,000 into 2. That is 66,000. That is also calculated. Overhead efficiency variance is standard variable overhead for production. Standard variable overhead for production we have computed as 65,000, and the standard overhead for actual hours is 66,000. That is calculated. So the difference is 1,000. Variance is 1,000. Okay. We are moving on to fixed overhead. Fixed overhead cost variance is the difference between absorbed fixed overhead and actual fixed overhead. Difference between absorbed fixed overhead and actual fixed overhead. As in the case of is 45,000 and budget hours is 30,000. So 1.5 per hour. 1.5 per hour. So absorbed fixed overhead is we have produce 32,500 hours. That is 32,500 units into 1. So 32,500 hours multiplied with 1.5. 1.5 is the fixed overhead rate per hour. So 48,750 is the budgeted fixed overhead. 48,750 is the absorbed fixed overhead, and actual fixed overhead is 50. The difference is 1,250. The variance is 1,250. Absorbed is less than the budgeted. So it is adverse variance. So moving on to fixed overhead expenditure variance. It is the difference between budgeted overhead and actual overhead. Budgeted overhead and actual overhead. Both these figures are readily given in the question. Budgeted overhead is given as 45,000 and actual overhead is given as 50,000. So the difference is 5,000 adverse. Actual is more than budgeted. So 5,000 adverse. Remember, this is a very simple thing. Budgeted overhead, difference between budgeted overhead and actual overhead. Budgeted overhead is given and actual overhead is also given. The difference, take the difference between these. Actual is more than budget, so the difference is, the variance is adverse. Another one is fixed overhead volume variance. Fixed overhead volume variance. The equations are same. With comparison with the variable overheads, absorbed fixed overhead minus budgeted fixed overhead. Absorbed fixed overhead minus budgeted fixed overhead. Absorbed fixed overhead we have calculated 48,750. The figure was readily available in the last slide, previous slide. 48,750 was the absorbed fixed overhead, and budgeted overhead is 45,000. So the difference is 3,750. 3,750. And we have fixed overhead efficiency variance. It is calculated by using recovered overhead minus standard overhead. Recovered overhead minus standard overhead. Recovered overhead is calculated by applying the equation actual hours into standard rate per hour. actual hours into standard rate per hour. Actual hours is 33,000 is readily given in the question. And standard rate per hour is 1.5. We have computed it. 1.5 fixed overhead per hour. So the recovered overhead is 49,500. Standard overhead is 49,500, and recovered overhead is has already been calculated 48,750. Difference between fixed overhead, recovered overhead and standard overhead is 750. Variance here is 750. Students, please pardon me. I'm actually moving very fast. I know we have to take a lot of time to learn this, but due to the limited time available to all of us, we are moving in a hurried manner. But for proper understanding of this, we need a lot of time. Then fixed overhead capacity variance. Fixed overhead capacity variance is the difference between actual hours and revised budget hours multiplied with standard fixed overhead. Please take down this equation. Fixed overhead capacity variance is actual hours minus revised budgeted hours into standard fixed overhead per hour. Standard fixed overhead per hour is already been calculated as 1.5. Actual hours is also readily available in the question as 33,000. We have to revise the budgeted hours for calculating capacity variance, because we are not simply calculating capacity variance here. We are calculating the revised capacity variance due to the difference between actual number of working days and the budgeted number of working days. There is a difference between actual number of working days and budgeted number of working days. So we have to revise the budgeted hours. Okay. So revised budgeted hours is calculated by using the equation budgeted hours divided by budgeted days into actual days. Since we have a change in the number of days, we are taking into account the number of days. Budgeted hours divided by budgeted days into actual days. Our budgeted hours was 30,000 with the expectation of 25 working days. That is, budgeted days was 25. So 35,000 divided by 25 into actual number of working days, it is 26,000. We have already fixed 30,000 budgeted hours, but due to increase in working days by 1, that is 25, is increased to 26. So naturally, the budgeted working day hours is revised to 31,200. This is applicable only for calculating the fixed overhead capacity variance. Remember, so fixed overhead capacity variance, our actual number of working hours is 33,000. Revised budgeted hours is 31,200, and standard fixed overhead per hour is 1.5. We have calculated earlier, so it is 2,700. Remember, we have worked more than the budgeted days, so it is actually favorable to the organization. It is favorable to the organization. We have only one more thing, that is calendar variance. Calendar variance is calculated by applying the actual number of working days minus budgeted days in the standard rate per day. We have actual number of working days as 26, budgeted number of working days as 25. Both these are readily available in the question, but standard rate per day must be computed. Standard rate per day. Standard fixed overhead for the period, for the budgeted period, or for 25 days is 45,000. Standard fixed overhead for 25 days is 45,000. So for 1 day, it is 45,000 divided by 25. That is standard overhead rate overhead per month divided by standard number of days or budgeted number of days. It is 45,000 divided by 25, rupees 1,800. 1,800 is the fixed overhead per day. So calendar variance is 26 minus 25 into 1,800. So it is 1,800 favorable. We have worked more than the budget or more than the standard. So the variance is favorable to our organization. Okay. Thank you all my dear participants. I am pretty sure that I was not in a position to explain all the concepts of fixed overheads into positive time. The ASAP faculties, ASAP members have given me more and more time. Even then, this I was not in a position to complete it because in a normal MCOM class, if I am teaching overhead variance, it will take 2 to 3 weeks by spending at least 1 hour a day. So within the time limit, I have tried my level best to tell you the concepts of all these. Material and labor, I think I have explained everything in detail. Whatever be, I am so thankful to all the students who have participated, who have listened to me, and all the supporting staff at ASAP. Thank you, the ASAP staff, for giving me the opportunity to speak to a large number of students across Kerala. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Hello.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for those kind words and thank you for giving us a presentation. Sir, we have a single question over here. Ms. Swati have asked that what are the possible theoretical or essay kind of questions we can ask this particular topic?
Okay. There are so many short questions as well as there are possibilities for essay type questions. Essay type question may be a combination of different things. Usually, essay type questions may come from the advantages and limitations of standard question and its utility. Utility of standard question, or explain the process of standard posting. That's an important question. Explain the process of standard posting. We have explained in the first session, and then it may be coupled with a question like advantages and limitations of standard posting. Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining us for this presentation, and thank you for all participants. Our session is winding up. So thank you, sir. Once again, thank you.